The Mercosur trade deal is one of the largest trade deals that Europe has ever completed with another country. It's been in the making for the last 25 years and is currently in its final stages of approval before the end of 2025. It's good news for big business. Car companies, technology companies and white good manufacturers across Europe will stand to gain billions as a result of this trade deal. It's very bad news for the European beef market. 99,000 tonne coming in at a reduced tariff could have severe implications across the European beef market and, in turn, huge implications for the Irish beef industry. If that 99,000 tonne comes in as high-end premium steak cuts, that could decimate the steak market. There's been a lot of talk about equivalent standards over the last number of months around Brazil lifting their standards in line with European production standards. Earlier this month, I travelled to Brazil along with Tomás Burke, Director of Livestock with the IFA, and Philip Doyle, Picture Editor with the Irish Farmers Journal, and what we found was something completely different. Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, is a huge issue across the world, not only for animal health but also for human health. Over the last 4 days we've travelled 3,000 kilometres across 4 states in Brazil. We've called at 13 agricultural stores and we've picked up prescription only antibiotics in all of those stores along the way. We went in, no English, looked for an antibiotic, and we've got them no issue whatsoever. We didn't have to give a herd number, we didn't have to give a tag number, we didn't even have to say who we were. There's no system here for monitoring antibiotic use on farms. We could have got any amount of it we wanted. Many of them asked us, do we want more than just one box? So when we go in here, we're looking for either a generic version of Draxxin, Marvicil, Nuflor. They're the three, we say, big ones.
They're the big ones at home. But we should look to go maybe at a higher level first, looking at the Rumensin, maybe the Colistin, even though it's banned. We know what it should look like on the shelves. And let's try and hit as high up the chain as we can in there.
And Thailand too.
Yes.
Yeah. Obrigado.
Well, how can we get on?
Good.
Any antibiotic? Good price, thank you. Obrigado.
Max. Yeah. There's huge issues here. Across Europe, there's moves being made to restrict the use of some of these antibiotics in the fight against AMR because it's causing deaths across Europe and across the world.
Yeah, and Irish and EU farmers have embraced it. If we look at this product, Cetifor, a high priority, critically important antibiotic that's rarely used now on Irish farms, and again, significant product, vital for the longer term goals of animal health and indeed human health. And again, no questions asked when we bought it. Another product here that we don't have, 28 days or 41 days withdrawal period on this product, no herd number asked for, no prescription asked for, and any amount could be purchased. Draxxin, product we're well used of, again, no, all prescription only medicines in this region, and the requirement is clearly stated on all of the boxes that they can only be sold under veterinary prescription. And yet, as Adam has said, we've walked into 13 stores and bought these products without a question being asked.
So farmers over here can be using these across their farms, across their animals, and there's no database to record that within stores or on farms, and that's the huge issue and the huge problem we would have with these standards here compared to the standards at home.
And without a doubt, and if we talk about systems and checks and balances, not even receipts issued for these products. And no record, nothing scanned in, no stock profiling in an awful lot of the stores that we went into. These weren't even scanned out of the inventory, just handed out over the counter freely.
The reason ourselves and the Farmers Journal went to Brazil was because we believed there were gaps in their control systems. What we learned from this expose is that there are in fact no effective control systems in Brazil. Farmers are sick of listening to the European Commission talk about equivalence of standards between European farmers and Mercosur farmers. Once again, what the expose shows is that there are no effective control standards in Brazil. We're going to take these findings to our government, to our MEPs, to the European Commission. And based on what you're going to see here and what you're going to hear from the health experts, there is no way that the European Commission can stand over what's going on in Brazil.
Who is Martin Cormican?
I'm a consultant microbiologist and professor of bacteriology at University of Galway in the medical school.
Could you explain to us in terms of what is antimicrobial resistance?
Antibiotic resistance or antimicrobial resistance means that antibiotics that you could depend on to kill bugs when they cause infection, you can't depend on them anymore. So antibiotics that 20 years ago we could use and be confident that they were going to work, now we're not sure whether they're going to work or not. And we often have to use, if you like, more powerful antibiotics in situations where we would have been able to use antibiotics that were easier to use in the past.
How big of a problem is it globally and maybe in Ireland as well?
It's a big problem both globally and in Ireland. It's much worse in some countries than it is in Ireland, but even in Ireland, everyday decisions that doctors are making about how to treat their patients are changed by antibiotic resistance. So it's not a problem for the future. It's a problem we've been living with now for 20 years and trying to manage, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse each year in Ireland and throughout the world.
How do we avoid antimicrobial resistance in the future?
The key to it is controlling how we use antibiotics. Antibiotics make the world a good place for antibiotic-resistant bugs. So the more antibiotics there are, the more advantage it is for a bug to be antibiotic resistant. If we use less antibiotics, then those antibiotic resistant bugs have less of an advantage. So we drive the problem. It's a problem that we have made by using antibiotics and overusing antibiotics. And that's true for how we use antibiotics in animals and how we use antibiotics in people. So it's one health, one problem, because it's the same families of antibiotics that we're using in animals and in people.
In Europe, there is, we'll say, rules being implemented and strict laws around the use of antibiotics and around the prescription of antibiotics and controlled use of certain antibiotics. There is rules there.
Europe has in many respects led the way in the control of antibiotics, particularly in control of antibiotic use in animals. So Europe was the first to ban the use of antibiotics as growth promoters. It's made huge strides to control the use of antibiotics under prescription. There's very tight regulation of the control of antibiotics in Europe now.
We're just back from Brazil last week, where we were able to travel across Brazil into many agricultural stores and purchase critically important antibiotics across the counter with no prescription, no proof of requirement. In your opinion, what do you think of that?
Well, we've worked very hard to stop doing that in Europe. And one of the examples you've given me is this one, for example, which is a third generation cephalosporin. So third generation cephalosporins are a critically important antibiotic. And to be able to purchase and use third generation cephalosporins without prescription is contrary to everything we've tried to achieve in the European Union over the last 20 years.
In terms of using antibiotics, we'll say irresponsibly, like so in Brazil, how does that contribute to AMR, and will we ever win that battle with AMR if this continues?
If we continue to use antibiotics the way we're using them, we won't win the battle against AMR, because we create a world where it's good to be an antibiotic-resistant bug. If we create that kind of world, bugs change really quickly. They can change overnight. So we feed a world where antibiotic resistance is an advantage. And everybody who's involved in this area agrees that controlling and reducing the use of antibiotics is absolutely the foundation of doing better on the control of antibiotic resistance.
If AMR becomes a bigger problem, this leads to deaths, and it leads to more deaths if AMR becomes a huge issue in the future as regards losing critically important antibiotics.
It is already resulting in people in early deaths of people. So there are people who are more difficult to treat now in Ireland and throughout the world, and there are various estimates of what the numbers are. It's very difficult to know for sure, but if you talk to anybody who's involved in the treatment of infection, they will tell you that we are already losing people that we would probably have had a few more good years if we didn't have the problem of antibiotic resistance.
Finally, you give an example of the importance of antibiotic use in the cancer treatment, and in terms of that program of cancer treatment, or with specific reference to leukemia, in terms of antibiotics being critically important in the treatment in terms of coming back out of that chemotherapy program.
Yes, so for the treatment of certain type of cancers, you give people drugs that work against the cancer cells, but they also do a lot of harm to the body's ability to protect itself against infection. And you have to bridge people through that period when their bone marrow is flat with antibiotics to manage their infection. So the treatment of certain types of cancers, including many blood cancers, is critically dependent on having antibiotics that we can rely on to bridge the person over the period while their body recovers from the chemotherapy.
As you can see, AMR is set to become a huge human health problem in the future, not just a problem in Brazil, but a problem globally. We also spoke to John Gilmore, a vet in Emla Veterinary Clinic in Elphin in County Roscommon, about the sale of antibiotics in Ireland and how that differs from what we found in Brazil.
John Gilmore, I'm a vet, so this is Emla Lodge Veterinary Clinic in Roscommon, and I also work as a vet in our other business, Farm Lab Diagnostics, a testing laboratory.
Tell me a bit about how you use antibiotics in your day-to-day business as a vet.
I suppose antibiotics are used as a treatment when needed. So if you determine as a vet that you need to use an antibiotic to cure an animal, then you prescribe the particular antibiotic based on your judgment, your experience, and maybe some other tests as well that you need to do, depending on the different cases that you're dealing with.
People talk about maybe low-level antibiotics and high-level antibiotics, and maybe some of the advice is there that you don't go for the top-shelf antibiotic first, that you start off maybe a little bit lower. Is that true?
Yeah, well, that is true. And again, so there is, I suppose, more of a recognition now that some of these antibiotics are more important or more critical in human use. So we try to reserve the use of those where possible. So if we think that an antibiotic that is regarded as being less critically important is going to do the job, then that's the antibiotic we will use rather than going to one of the more critically important antibiotics.
What level of recording needs to take place from a vet level and at a farm level in order to use antibiotics?
Okay, so in order for antibiotics to be purchased or to be used in an animal, first of all, there has to be a consultation where a farmer will engage with the vet will decide on what treatment needs to be used, and then a prescription will be issued. That prescription now in Ireland, for the last since this year, we have the National Veterinary Prescribing System, so those prescriptions all get logged centrally, and so the farmer and the vet has that information logged centrally, plus that information is there available to be monitored by the Department of Agriculture as well. So that prescribing piece needs to be done, and that information needs to be logged and recorded. And then the farmer has to log that information as well, and they also have to keep the requirement to keep the prescription, and also they have a requirement to record the medicine usage. So when they use the product, in which animals they have to record which animals they're using it in.
Is AMR becoming more of a concern to vets, and will it be a bigger concern in the future?
I think it's a concern to everyone, not just vets. Farmers are getting very cognizant now of the importance of being selective about antibiotics, and that's coming for a whole range of reasons, both to maintain the proper function of antibiotics on farms, but also it's a shared space effectively between farms and people and the environment. So if antibiotics aren't working on farms, then those bacteria as well, resistance can spread, and that can affect humans. So again, someone in the farming family that potentially is sick and needs treatment, this is an issue that affects both animals and humans.
What's your opinion on being able to purchase critical level antibiotics over the counter in Brazil? Do you think that's acceptable?
I think it's actually quite shocking. It's something that doesn't happen in Ireland. It's something that hasn't happened in Ireland for a long time, even before the National Veterinary Prescribing System. There are antibiotics that should be reserved just for critically important cases, when they have to be used and where you can justify their usage, and where no other antibiotics are going to be effective in treating those animals. So definitely not something that you should just choose and say, that's something that I want to be able to use.
People might say what happens in Brazil is well and good, and that won't affect things in Ireland, but is AMR a bigger problem than that? Is it a global problem?
AMR is a global problem, and it's probably going to be the biggest global problem that's going to affect both human and veterinary medicine over the coming decades. So our ability to treat animals effectively and treat people effectively has been a huge game changer over the last 100 years. And bacterial diseases are treatable now, but if AMR continues to spread as it does, and through improper use of antibiotics, then that is going to be a huge problem, and it is probably going to be the biggest problem that's going to affect human health over the coming decades.
It's hard to describe the vast gulf that exists between Brazilian beef production systems and European beef production systems. As we travel across 4 states and almost 3,000 kilometres, we found evidence of breaching environmental laws, we found evidence of zero traceability, evidence of tag removal, and purchasing antibiotics without prescription. No matter what anybody says, Brazil are decades away from meeting the same standards as is asked of European farmers. Equivalent standards and level playing field, you make up your mind.